When I refused to give my mother-in-law $1,500, she threw hot tea in my face. Then everything changed. It started with something so small. I never thought it would lead to what happened next. When I refused to give my mother-in-law $1,500, money she didn't even need, she reacted in a way I could have never imagined. I didn't expect her to grab a cup of hot tea and throw it right in my face. But that wasn't the end of it. What happened after? Well, let's just say she didn't see it coming. Neither did I. Why did my mother-in-law want the money so badly? Why did things escalate to the point of violence? And what exactly happened the next morning that left her completely speechless? Today, I'm going to walk you through the shocking events that unfolded in my life. A story about family, betrayal, and the unexpected consequences of saying no when you've had enough. You see, this wasn't the first time my mother-in-law had asked for money. In fact, it had become a routine. Every month, it was something new, some emergencies, some excuse. And I'm not just talking about groceries or small things. We're talking thousands of dollars. I paid the bills, the rent, the utilities, you name it. My husband and I were already supporting her financially, and it had been going on for years. But this time was different. She asked for more than I was willing to give, and that's when everything exploded. Now, to really understand how things got to this breaking point, you have to know the backstory. When I first met my husband, his mother seemed, well, nice. She was friendly enough, and we got along fine. But there were little things I noticed over time. Comments she would make about money, her constant complaints about not having enough, and how difficult her life was. It was subtle at first, but as the months went by, those little comments turned into requests. At first, it was small things. Oh, I'm a bit short this month. Could you cover the gas bill? Or, I could really use some help with groceries. I didn't mind helping. I mean, family is family, right? But as time went on, the requests kept coming, and they started getting bigger. It wasn't just groceries or small bills anymore. She needed help paying her rent. Then it was her car insurance. Then medical bills. And before I knew it, my husband and I were covering almost all of her expenses. I didn't say anything at first because I didn't want to cause tension in the family. I figured she was struggling, and maybe this was just temporary. I thought, this will pass, but it never did. Month after month, she would ask for more, and soon enough, I realized I was the one paying for everything. My husband was trying his best to help, but I was the one handling the finances, and it started to wear me down. We weren't rich by any means. My husband worked hard, and so did I. We had our own bills to take care of, our own goals and dreams. And every time she asked for money, it felt like we were putting our lives on hold just to support her. What made it even worse was that it never felt like enough. No matter how much we helped, she always wanted more. There was always some new problem, some new emergency, and each time the amount she asked for got bigger. It was exhausting. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to be the bad guy or come across as selfish, but I could feel the resentment building. I mean, how much is too much? At what point do you draw the line? And then came the $1,500. This was different. This wasn't just another small request. This was a huge amount of money for us, and frankly, it didn't seem necessary. She wasn't in a life-threatening situation. She wasn't on the verge of losing her home. She just wanted it. She didn't explain why. She didn't even ask nicely. It was like she expected it, as if it was something I owed her. That was the moment I knew I had to say no. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep draining myself, draining our savings, just to meet her endless demands. But I had no idea how badly she would react. So here's what happened when the $1,500 request came in. It was a normal weekday evening. My husband and I had just finished dinner when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother-in-law. All it said was, "I need $1,500 by tomorrow." No explanation, no please, no, can we talk about this? Just a demand. I stared at my phone for a minute, feeling my stomach twist. We didn't have an extra $1,500 just lying around. We had bills, a mortgage, and we were trying to save for a family of our own. I showed my husband the message, and he sighed, rubbing his temples. He was tired too. We were both tired. But something in me snapped this time. I had been quietly dealing with this for years, making the transfers, covering for her, and pretending everything was fine. But $1,500? Out of nowhere? It felt like she didn't care at all about what it was doing to us. So I decided right then I was going to say no. For the first time, I was going to stand my ground. I texted back, "I'm sorry, but we can't give you that much money right now. We've been helping as much as we can, but this is just too much." I hit send and waited. My heart was pounding because I knew she wouldn't take it well, but I didn't expect what happened next. Almost immediately she called, and when I answered, she didn't even let me speak. She started yelling, telling me how ungrateful I was, how after all she had done for us, this was how I was repaying her. She didn't care that we were already paying all her bills. She didn't care that we were struggling ourselves. All she cared about was that I had said no. I tried to explain, but every time I opened my mouth, she cut me off. Her voice was sharp, like she was personally offended, like I had betrayed her. It wasn't just about the money. It was like my refusal had crossed some invisible line, a lie I didn't even know existed. And then suddenly she hung up. I sat there, stunned. My hands were shaking. I had expected her to be upset, but the level of anger in her voice, it was beyond anything I had imagined. I thought that would be the end of it for the night, that she'd cool down. Maybe we'd talk later. But I was wrong. Less than an hour later, she showed up at our house. I heard the doorbell, and there she was, standing on our porch, holding a cup of tea in her hand. She barged in before I could even say anything. At first, she acted like she was calm, but you could see the tension in her face. She started lecturing me again about how she couldn't believe I would deny her something so simple, how I was selfish and didn't understand what it meant to be family. My husband stood there quietly, unsure of what to say, while I just listened, trying to keep my cool. But as the conversation went on, her tone changed. She started raising her voice again, accusing me of trying to cut her off, of not caring about her struggles. And then, in one heated moment, she took the cup of hot tea she was holding and threw it right in my face. The moment the tea hit my face, everything seemed to slow down. For a split second, I didn't even register the pain. I just stood there in complete shock. Hot liquid was dripping down my face, my skin burning, and all I could think was, did that really just happen? I blinked, trying to hold back tears, not just from the heat, but from the sheer disbelief of what she had done. My mother-in-law, standing there in front of me, looked almost proud of herself. There was no apology in her eyes, no regret. She had done it on purpose. She wanted to hurt me, and in that moment she had. My husband rushed to grab a towel, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, replaying the last few minutes in my head over and over again. She had yelled, she had insulted me, and then she had thrown hot tea in my face like I was nothing to her, like I was the one who had done something wrong. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. The pain was setting in now, the sting from the burn mixing with the anger boiling up inside me. I had never felt so disrespected, so humiliated, in my own home, no less. And what did she do after? She just stood there, arms crossed, as if daring me to do something about it. But I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I just looked at her straight in the eye and said, "Get out." My voice was calm, but I could feel the tremble in it. I wasn't calm, not at all. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Not in front of her, not after what she had done. She smirked, shrugged, and turned to leave, not saying another word. She walked out the door, as if she hadn't just assaulted me in my own home. As if this was normal. As if throwing hot tea at someone was just another way to win an argument. When the door closed behind her, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My husband came over with the towel, apologizing over and over again, but it wasn't his fault. He was just as shocked as I was. We both knew she was difficult, but we had never imagined she would go this far. I pressed the towel to my face, trying to cool down the burn. The pain was deeper than that. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. The person who was supposed to be family, someone I had helped for years, had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. I sat down on the couch, Still processing what had just happened, my husband sat beside me, silent, unsure of what to say. He knew this wasn't something that could be fixed with an apology or a simple conversation. Things had changed. I could feel the anger rising inside me. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about boundaries. She had pushed me to my limit, and I knew I couldn't let it slide this time. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. She thought she could get away with it because we'd always given in to her demands. But this time, things were going to be different. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what had happened, replaying it in my mind over and over again. The sting on my skin had started to fade, but the anger, it was still there, burning inside me, even stronger than before. I couldn't let this go. It wasn't just about the money anymore, or even the tea. It was about years of disrespect, years of bending over backward to meet her endless demands. She had crossed a line, and I knew that if I didn't do something, if I didn't stand up for myself once and for all, she'd never stop. She would keep pushing, keep taking until there was nothing left. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and then it hit me. I knew exactly what I was going to do. You see, I realized that for all these years she had been using guilt, manipulation, and pressure to control us, to make us feel like we owed her something. But the truth was, we didn't owe her anything. And I knew there was one thing I could do that would send a message loud and clear, something she wouldn't expect. The next morning, before my husband even woke up, I got out of bed and went straight to the computer. I started pulling up all the bills, her rent, her utilities, her credit card payments, everything that I had been handling for her. For years, I'd been the one making sure she didn't fall behind, the one keeping everything running smoothly while she lived comfortably without lifting a finger. I opened my online banking account and started canceling every single automatic payment linked to her bills. One by one, I cut her off. Rent? Canceled. Electricity? Canceled. Phone bill? Canceled. It felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders with each click. For the first time, I wasn't going to be her safety net anymore. She would have to take care of her own life, her own responsibilities. I was done. When my husband woke up, I told him what I had done. He didn't argue. He understood. He knew it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. We had given her everything, and she had repaid us with anger, with entitlement, with violence. Enough was enough, but I didn't stop there. I wanted her to know that things were different now, that she couldn't control us anymore. So I picked up the phone and called her. When she answered, her tone was sharp, like she was expecting me to apologize for the night before. But I wasn't apologizing. I calmly told her, "From now on, you're on your own. We won't be paying your bills anymore. You'll need to figure things out yourself." There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment. I could almost hear her processing what I had just said, trying to wrap her mind around the fact that the financial support she had relied on for so long was gone. Then she exploded. She screamed, she threatened. She accused me of being cruel and heartless. She said I was abandoning her, that I didn't care about family. But her words didn't have the same effect on me anymore. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel bad. I felt free. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her anger. I wasn't afraid of saying no. I knew I had made the right decision, and there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I have in years. There was no knot in my stomach, no dread about another phone call, another demand. I had done it. I had taken my life back, and I didn't feel one bit guilty about it. But I knew my mother-in-law wasn't going to let things go so easily. She always had a way of bouncing back, of finding some angle to guilt us into giving in. This time, though, I was ready for whatever she might throw at me. Sure enough, by mid-morning, my phone started buzzing. It was her. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. First, they were angry. She accused me of being selfish, of betraying her. But I didn't respond. After a while, the texts shifted to something new, desperation. She wrote things like, "How could you do this to me?" And, "I need that money." She even went as far as asking if I could just send a small amount, trying to reel me back in. But I stood firm. I didn't respond to a single message. For the first time, I didn't feel any obligation to explain myself or give in to her guilt trips. I was done. And then the surprise came. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I peeked through the window, and there she was. My mother-in-law standing outside looking disheveled and stressed. But this time, there was no cup of tea in her hand. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She wasted no time, launching into how she couldn't believe I had cut her off, how she didn't know how she was going to manage without our help. She rambled on about bills and how hard things were for her, but the more she talked, the more I could see the cracks in her story. I didn't say much. I just let her talk, and that's when the surprise hit me. She wasn't here because she truly needed help. She was here because she didn't want to lose control. It became clear in that moment, my mother-in-law wasn't as helpless as she made herself out to be. She had been using us, relying on us not because she couldn't survive without us, but because it was easier. She didn't want to face the reality of standing on her own, the $1,500, the bills, the constant demands. It was all about maintaining control over our lives, over my husband and me. And now that I had taken that control away, she didn't know what to do. Her anger, her tears, it wasn't about the money. It was about the power she had lost. I looked her in the eye and said calmly, "You'll figure it out. You've made it this far, and you're stronger than you think. But we can't keep doing this for you. You need to take care of yourself now." She didn't expect that. Her face dropped, and for the first time, she seemed truly at a loss for words. She stood there, silent for a few seconds, then mumbled something under her breath before turning and walking away. No dramatic outburst, no more yelling, she just left. As I closed the door behind her, I felt a sense of finality. I knew that things would never be the same, but I also knew that this was the start of a new chapter for both of us. Looking back on that time, I realized that the hardest part wasn't saying no to the money. It was breaking free from the cycle of guilt and manipulation that had kept me trapped for so long. For years, I had convinced myself that helping her was the right thing to do, that family meant giving until there was nothing left to give. But I learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, it's one of the healthiest things you can do for yourself and your relationships. If you're dealing with a situation like mine, I want you to remember this. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your peace, your finances, and your mental health. People who truly care about you will understand, and those who don't, well, they'll show their true colors soon enough. Thank you for watching my story. If you've ever been through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How did you handle it? What did you learn? And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You never know, your story might help someone else going through the same thing.